down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the number one liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. And, I gotta tell you, we're about ready here in the Pacific Northwest. We're about ready to have probably the coldest weekend that we have had yet this season. And in fact, it might even, we are not scheduled to be above freezing starting on Friday until the following Monday. Okay? Very, very cold. It's actually kind of odd for us to get that, especially with me where I'm going to say I'm fairly close to the water. Of the Puget Sound, and so we don't we don't really get that cold very often. We have done it in the past, but we don't get that cold very often. It's usually for a short period of time, but they are scheduled. They've got us on the schedule for us to be extremely cold Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and possibly into Monday. Friday is when it's going to be very cold. And it's going to kick off tomorrow for us. Tomorrow night, it's going to start getting really cold. And I know a lot of people in the Northeast and in the Midwest, they're all like, yeah, you're a wimp. You're a wimp. But hey, that's part of the reason why I live in the Pacific Northwest behind enemy lines. Just got to point that out. I got to point one other thing out too. Mr. Outlaw Dogs. Happy belated birthday to you, sir. And also today, Mrs. Whiskey completed another round, another elliptical around the sun. That's right. Mrs. Whiskey is another, another time that she is 29. I love her to death. She keeps me in line. I'm going to tell you that much. I talk about her every once in a while, and yeah. So there you go. I want to give also a special shout out to some of you folks that are here due to the Sean Parnell Battleground show. Sean gave me a shout out at the very end of the show today. Because of what we were kind of talking about prior to the show in the chat. And so welcome. Come on in. Take a seat. For those of you who are over on Rumble, which I would assume most of you are because of the fact that Sean, I believe Sean only transmits on Rumble. But come on, sit up next to the fire, grab a drink, and listen to the show. If you like it, I would definitely appreciate you hitting that thumbs up button, because according to WBR Brock, who is Wendy Bell Radio's producer, also helps Sean produce his show. According to them, the hitting of the thumbs up button is they call it like in Rumble. I haven't quite figured that out because it's just hitting the thumbs up button, which is, I guess, the like button technically. But anyway, they definitely say that helps with things like trying to get more exposure, which is a goal of mine for this program, is to get more exposure, more followers. I'm trying to make this my thing. So don't be bashful. Come on in, say hello, sit down, jump on in. For those of you that don't know, Wednesday night is, of course, our Whiskey Wednesday. It's like Taco Tuesday, but for badasses. And not only that, but it's apparently the Rumble crew has determined that this is Pantsless and Braless Wednesdays. So thank goodness I'm the only one on the show, on the video. I crack myself up. But anyway, it's been just an incredible hot January since we've kicked. Here we're only in January 10th, and oh my gosh, I've got so much stuff to talk about that I can't even That's what I was telling Sean about earlier, is that I'm having a hard time just in the last 2 shows here in 2024 to try and figure out exactly everything that I want to talk about. And because there's just so much going on. There is just so much going on. It is just fantastic. But as always, I need to let everybody know what I am drinking tonight, and that is Buffalo Trace. Oh, well, looky there. I flipped my camera backwards, and apparently the words come in backwards now, too. I'm going to have to switch that. I'll have to do that before next time, but that's Buffalo Trace. That's just, I didn't even think about that. I was flipping it to make it to where, if I point a direction, I know which way I'm pointing. But anyway. And, of course, I am drinking it out of, and this is another worded thing, my True Grit Roots Network rocks glass, I guess you could say, whatever it is. And there's my Whiskey Stones in the bottom, as always. Great tasting stuff. Let's just put it like that. All right, I'll try and keep the words, at least the camera words, off the screen for that. All right. Speaking about True Grit Roots Network, as soon as I can find my cursor. Speaking about True Grit Roots Network, let me go ahead and tell you about them. True Grit Roots Network is a blues, 100% all blues station right now. We are a digital radio station that is broadcasting 24/7, 365 on your app devices. You can join us on the web. You can go to tgrn.net and you can get to our station. You can listen right there on your PC, or if you want, you can download our app. Or you can also find us in the Live 365 catalog of digital radio stations. Check us out if you would, and let me tell you about my buddy who has a fantastic show on our network. Join Mighty Mouth Blues for 2 hours of authentic roots rockin' music every Tuesday from 8 to 10 p.m. Central Time, with an encore presentation on Saturdays, 8 to 10 p.m. Central, exclusively on TGRN Blues. Multi-award winner blues radio host Jonathan Oogie Richards and co-host Amber Burr-Hill bring their high-energy radio show featuring today's hit makers while paying tribute to the iconic blues men and women who paved the path for today's blues artists. Get more information at tgrn.net. TGRN Blues, part of the True Grit Roots Network out of Austin, Texas. And, of course, I do appreciate you listening there because I am part owner in that endeavor. So, thank you, TGRN and True Grit Roots Network. Just check them out. Just check us out. Got some great stuff coming. I've got onboarded 2 brand new on-air personalities too, and so we're really excited to see what these 2 new folks can do for our lineup. All right, we have had just a jam-packed day. In fact, I was getting like all kinds of alerts and things like that. We had Hunter Biden made an appearance on Capitol Hill. Granted, he didn't say jack shit. Walked in, sat down, pretty much kind of thumbed his nose at the Republicans in the hearing, because the hearing that he walked into was the hearing on whether or not they wanted to hold him in contempt of court for not showing up for his appearance to testify, where he gave that speech over on the Senate side rather than the House side of Capitol Hill. So anyway, he walked in, he sat for, I don't know, probably about 30 minutes and then left. I've got more on that here in just a little bit. We've got the whole Fani Willis thing has just lit up in the last 24 hours with all kinds of things. I've got more on that as well. Plus, we had testimony in front of the D.C. District Appeals Court for the Trump immunity claim. We have that. That happened today as well. I don't have much on that other than maybe a few comments here in just a couple of minutes. But yeah, it's just an incredible. And then I'm going to round out the show at the very end. I'm going to round out the show with a special message from the man who had his talent on loan from God, but unfortunately God took it back here not too long ago. And so, yeah, I have a message from Rush Limbaugh, an inspiring message that I think we need to do. So first of all, I've talked about it the last program. I've talked a little bit about some of the stuff that's been going on, and we've had a lot of things happen, from the Epstein case documents being redacted and pronounced, or being broadcast to everybody in the public, and all of these different things. But there's a reason. There's a method. I don't know much of a method, but there's a reason behind why all of this stuff is coming out. And social media has been lighting up. All the leftist lunatics, the sycophantic lunatic left, have all jumped on and tried to just drag Trump through the mud as much as they can. There's a reason for it. There is a reason for it. And this is an indication right here. Let me just go ahead and show you this, because this came out on the 5th. This was CNN's first Road to 270 electoral map. Now, for those of you that don't know, they kind of update these maps, and they do these maps in order to try and, demonstrate the path to get to the 270 electoral votes. But this map, it really causes a little bit of pause for some of these folks, especially those who really had the belief that Joe Biden was just going to walk away with it this year. So just to give you an idea in terms of the colors, if you're listening on the audio portion of the program later, head on over to Rumble and check out my Whiskey Musings Broadcast channel, and you can take a look and see this. But the electoral map is obviously broken up into three basic colors. You have red, you have blue, and then you have gold. Now, the gold color or the yellow color that you see is those that are sort of in a toss-up situation. The red are ones that they anticipate are going to essentially go either for sure Republican or leaning Republican. And then, of course, the different shades of blue are those that are going to the Democrats or leaning Democrat. The interesting thing about the map is not so much how accurate it is, because I'll be completely honest with you. Polls are just like the only pollster that I really actually trust, who's been, really accurate, is actually the People's Pundit. His name is Rich Savage, or Savage Rich, I guess they call him. But anyway, he's been fairly more accurate than he's much more accurate than most pollers, and so he's the only one that I really put any stock in, because of all the stuff that he does in order to try and make his stuff accurate. And maybe one of these days I'll try and get him onto this broadcast. He goes and does Sean's show all the time. He and Sean are friends. Yeah, Rich Barris. Thank you very much. I keep forgetting his last name, but Rich Barris, who is the People's Pundit. He also has a show here on Rumble too, that you might want to go and check out. But outside of that, the thing is that the left actually looks at these things, and they are running scared. In fact, it's so much so that you can just smell the desperation in a lot of what these people are doing, especially, on social media, and when you listen to them speak and all the news propagandist outlets and everything else. They are all running scared. In fact, again, here we go. We have another one. Now, granted, this is in Breitbart, but here we go. We have another poll that shows Trump beating Biden in several key swing states as more voters believe that he is going to emerge the victor. Now, this whole thing about, the Trump trials, and he's going to be convicted and he's going to be in jail and all of this other stuff, that's all being thrown and tossed to the wayside, folks. And the reason why is because, of course, the wheels of justice, whatever wheels they might be, turn very slowly. And it's a long slog, more often than not, to get to an end result. So when these guys started popping the lawsuits out late last year, mid to late last year, I mean, it's going to be a feat to actually get one of these things completely done by the 2024 election time. And even then, just the numbers of people that are starting to believe that Trump actually is being persecuted politically for all of this stuff is starting to grow, and his support is starting to grow. And once again, he's starting to gain steam. He's starting to gain momentum. And going into, next week is Super Tuesday, the Iowa caucus, which is the first one. And so we're going to, we're going to see something that's very interesting, because Ron DeSantis has tossed a lot of effort into Iowa. And as you all know, hopefully by now, Chris Christie has decided to suspend his campaign. Why it took him this freaking long to do it, I have no idea. I mean, he should have done it like 2 weeks after he announced. But he went ahead and suspended his campaign today. And a lot of people are suppositioning the reason why is because they're thinking that those who were behind Chris Christie are actually going to now jump behind Nikki Haley, and Nikki Haley might have, get a little bit of a bump for that. Now, I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. Christie got in, and I think a lot of people forgot this, but Christie got in for the sole purpose that he was going to try and derail Trump. Failed, just like he failed. Just like he's failed with all of his governance up there in New Hampshire and everything else. But he's decided that he's out, which is cool. So the only ones that we really have left are Trump, DeSantis, Haley, and Ramaswamy. So we're going to have to see kind of what happens here. But there are people out there who are saying that if DeSantis loses in Iowa to Trump, and right now, I mean, even though Iowa is a caucus and not an actual voted type of thing, there is polls that are pointing to a Trump victory in Iowa. And if there's some suggestion that if Ron DeSantis loses in Iowa, he will concede and drop out of the race. Now, whether or not he throws any support behind Trump, we don't know, but I can tell you that generally speaking, those who were behind Ron and have stayed behind Ron are more than likely not going to jump anywhere else other than directly behind Trump. So realistically, if Ron steps out of the race, all it's going to do is help Trump further. Now the other one that's coming is New Hampshire. And that one is also coming up. And so Nikki Haley is hoping that if she can even pull out like a decent second place victory in Iowa, that she may have the advantage going into New Hampshire. Don't know about that. Not really too sure. I can tell you that, again, Trump is kind of polling pretty well. Granted, it's not as much of a lead as it is in Iowa, but he's still polling pretty well in New Hampshire. So, and then of course, South Carolina, there's no way Nikki Haley is even in her home state. I mean, it's all the polling and all the indications are indicating that she's going to lose that. So yeah, it's just going to be kind of interesting. And you know, what's really been interesting in this entire situation is the fact that Haley, while she's been gaining steam, she, just like Ron DeSantis, have like stepped on some landmines in the process. And so she seems to like have picked up a little bit, but she ends up to where she's said some things in some town halls, and she's made some gaffes and some mistakes and things like that have demonstrated that she realistically is not ready, in my mind, not prepared, and doesn't have the chops to actually become president. And we all know that Don Jr. has clearly stated publicly that he will do everything he can to keep Haley from being the second on the ticket for Donald Trump. And Mrs. Whiskey was asking me, does anybody know who Trump is going to pick as his running mate? And I'll be honest with you right now, I don't really see much of an indication as to who he might even be considering. Because Ron DeSantis, he's not going to be second seat material. And Trump is not going to put him in. We have, there's a possibility he might pull like somebody like Scott, or he might pull somebody like Kristi Noem. He might pull somebody like Outlaw Dogs mentions Lee Zeldin. He's going to hold that as close to the vest as I think possible until the time comes where he is going to eventually, bring that out into the public once he gets the nomination and, that kind of thing. But that being said, I still think that Trump is playing a very odd game. He's playing a very odd game with this, in the fact that right now, with all of the polls and all of everything that is going on here, all Trump really has to do in order to really, really take this thing home in the stretch is point at Joe Biden and let Joe Biden literally, take as much rope as he wants. Because, and I've said this for a long time. I'm like, Trump needs to stop talking about Trump. I mean, he needs to stop talking about, all of his competitors. He needs to stop with the whole conviction thing and all of his comments about Fani Willis and Letitia James and all of these other things. He just needs to basically point to Joe Biden and go, see, you've had 3.5 years, whatever, of that. Are you any better today? And that's it. I mean, he essentially could do what Biden has done or did to him in 2020, and he could literally sit in the basement and just say, Biden, and be able to pretty much, take this into hand. So we'll have to see what happens once once all of the primaries and everything are taken care of, and he gets the nomination, and we'll see what happens, what he decides to do. But he really does. He just needs to focus on Biden and focus on how bad Biden is. And in fact, how bad Biden is very, very obvious, because Biden kicked off his 2024 campaign in the speech that he did. And he had a very, very similar tone to what he did with the Independence Hall speech. It was all anti-American, anti-Trump, MAGA extremism, anti-whatever rhetoric. The entire thing was. And so I guess even though the left was like going off and saying, oh, that was the greatest speech, that didn't you see how Biden was just so great and he was alive and he was confident and he was, powerful and blah, blah, blah. Well, apparently the reality of that is that he didn't do as well with that speech. He didn't do as well with that speech as what everybody, was trying to say that he did, because they've reached into the bullpen and they've pulled out Obama. Obama came out January 7th. He went to the White House and talked to Biden's, political folks, and pretty much has kind of stated in no uncertain terms, and I'm kind of paraphrasing all this, but he's pretty much basically said, Biden, you stay out of everything, and let your political campaign advisors run everything. He acknowledges, but Obama, this from the Townhall piece, Obama acknowledges Trump's political power. Former President Biden is reportedly deeply concerned about former President Trump's strong 2024 chances to take back the White House. According to reports, Obama met with President Joe Biden in December to discuss the president's re-election campaign, which is looking like the next Titanic. The Washington Post noted that Obama got animated while speaking to his former vice president about the upcoming 2024 election, suggesting that Biden's aides and advisors must be given full authority to make decisions without first getting clearance from the White House. Okay. So, let me just point something out to you. And I don't know if anybody, for those of you that watch Dan Bongino's show, okay. He made a comment that I think was an observation from the time when he was in the White House as a Secret Service agent. And I think it's extremely telling in terms of the fact of where Biden believes he is the better man. When you have somebody who is so arrogant and so full of themselves as what Biden is, you are not going to get him to go quietly. Okay. And so one of the things that came out, or that Dan Bongino made a statement of, is that Joe Biden believes that all of Obama's success during that 8 years was due to Joe Biden. Think about that for a second. Joe Biden, as vice president, believes that all of Obama's successes are due to Joe Biden. In other words, Joe Biden doesn't think that Obama did anything during the presidency, didn't drive anything, didn't, do some of the things that the left keeps claiming that he did. So these guys are at odds with each other, folks. They really don't like each other. And if you've ever seen video, even now, of when Obama has visited the White House, Joe is just like a confused, lost little puppy. And Obama is like surrounded by all of his sycophants and everything else. I've already told you on this show that most, if not all, of the Biden White House is filled with old administrators, old advisors of Obama's. So this is pretty much kind of, a de facto third term for Obama. So yeah, I just don't see where these guys are really going to get along. And there even is some suggestion too, by the way, there's some suggestion that, that Michelle, Big Mike, might go in and, be the candidate, that they'll, send Biden through and everything. And then toward the end, something will happen. And then the DNC will just toss a third party into it. Yeah, I don't know for sure, but she's certainly she's certainly making waves and comments about it being, staying up at night. Bongino doesn't think so, if you watch him, but yeah. So anyway, I don't know. I'm not too sure. I know Gavin Newsom is just doing absolutely stellar in his state of California, to the point where I doubt he's even going to get the nod. He's sort of like faded off into obscurity too. So anyway, we'll pick this back up in just a minute. But first, I want to tell you about the Whiskey Musings Broadcast place, where you can go and get fantastic gear with the Whiskey Musings Broadcast logo, as well as my saying when I drink, I think. Head on over to store.whiskeymusings.online. That's store.whiskeymusings.online, and take a look at all of the things that I offer. I've got t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, glassware, water bottles, aprons, just all kinds of stuff. You can head on over there and pick something up and support the show. I don't necessarily care for like begging for money per se, but I do appreciate it when you do support the program. I'd like for you guys, for my Whiskey Warriors, to pick up something in the process, get some good quality gear. So head on over to store.whiskeymusings.online and pick up some gear, caps, like I said, caps, t-shirts, sweatshirts, things like that. And once you do, one of the greatest things that I think that the Whiskey Warriors have been kicking off to me is, once you do that, take a photo of yourself. I have been getting fantastic photos from people running around with my gear and showing off my gear in all different areas of the country, whether it comes from Florida, up in Pennsylvania. The last pet of the week last week, you could see Amy over on Rumble. She was running the dogs in her agility course. Her dogs are just absolutely fabulous. But, send me photos. That's just awesome. I love seeing pictures from my Whiskey Warriors, and I might even put them on the air too. Sometimes I do that. I do that for things like when folks go around and get the buttons and do the button thing. That's really cool. I love seeing all the photos and seeing everything. I've been to Florida. I've been to the Flight 93 memorial, being taken by the Whiskey Warriors. And so I do appreciate all that. So once again, head on over to store.whiskeymusings.online, peruse my offering. And if you purchase something, yeah, I do take a little bit for the show, but it's just a little bit. It's just a little bit. So yeah, I do appreciate the support, and get yourself something, because I'm sure there was a gift that you didn't get over Christmas, so you deserve something. There you go. Once again, store.whiskeymusings.online. All right. So in terms of all of the things that are going on about Trump, I've talked about this on the broadcast before. I've talked about, the constitutionality of the 14th Amendment. I've talked about a few different ways that the Supreme Court, which has taken up that case and is supposed to hear arguments in the first part of February. I think it's February 8th. And so, all of these things, I've tried to explain on social media and everything how this is sort of really, really questionable to try and take him off of the ballot. But, of course, sycophantic Democrats, leftists, liberal lunatics, all believe, or have a vast majority that believe, that Donald Trump should be kicked off the ballot. Now, a lot of those people, I'm going to tell you right now, don't know the Constitution as well as we do. Okay? So because of that, they went ahead and they keep saying that he should be tossed off the ballot, and I keep pointing out that there's a lot of problems with that. Not to mention the fact that, it's kind of interesting how Democrats keep talking about how they want to stop fascism, but yet, according to this hot air piece, 81% of Democrats think Trump should be tossed off the ballot. That sounds fascist to me. So the anti-fascist crowd is actually being fascist. I mean, gee, where did I see that before? Maybe Antifa? These people are just so damn idiotic and just lost. I can't. I don't even understand. I mean, when Bill Engvall said you can't fix stupid, boy, or maybe, I don't remember who the comedian was that did. Maybe it was him, but somebody said you can't fix stupid. And I'm just going to tell you, yeah, we're going to defend democracy, but the best way for us to defend democracy is to prevent anyone who disagrees with me from going to or with them, in their case, from going to the going to the voters and get picked. God, these guys are just horrible. All right. Well, another thing that happened this week is apparently we had another missing in action in the White House. And by that, I mean, do you remember when Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg disappeared because he was on, paternity leave because his husband apparently had a baby or something? I don't know. Anyway, he disappeared for almost 2 months and nobody even recognized the fact that he was gone. Well, guess what? He's not the only one. Now, this guy, the Secretary of Transportation, he disappears for 2 months. Nobody really cares. I mean, nobody really cares. But this guy disappearing is a big problem. Oh, and thank you, Outlaw Dogs. It was Ron White who said you can't fix stupid. So thank you for that. But this guy disappearing, this is a hefty problem. This is a really hefty problem. Lloyd Austin, who is the Secretary of Defense, okay, mysteriously disappeared, not once, but twice. And it's kind of interesting that he disappeared for what was considered originally an elective surgery, and then complications from said surgery. And that was the story about it. But it was even worse over his second disappearance, because not only was he out, but also his second in command was out. The next person, or the people that would know, were also out on vacation or, whatever. Lloyd Austin apparently was diagnosed as having prostate cancer. And the original elective procedure that he went to go do is essentially a treatment for that prostate cancer, according to the medical officials. Now, this comes out of the Washington Examiner, where his hospitalization was his second one was a result of complications from that original elective procedure. Apparently, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer last month, which was detected early on December 22nd. He underwent a minimally invasive and surgical procedure called a prostatectomy to treat and cure prostate cancer, according to the statement from Dr. John Maddox, who was at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. The problem isn't so much that he did. The problem is that apparently nobody in the White House knew. In fact, they've even had press releases about this. And he just disappeared. Nobody knew where he was. Well, I'm kind of with Dan Bongino on this one too, because he has a security detail. They had to know where he was. So somebody knew, but it just seems really odd and weird. And once again, throws into question who the hell's actually running the show up there. I mean, at the White House, who in the hell is running the show? Because it certainly isn't Joe Biden. Joe Biden didn't know. None of his underling staffers knew. And now the question is whether or not Lloyd Austin should actually continue. I personally think that he should probably focus on his health. But the other piece out of this is whether or not he needs to get fired for not letting anybody know. Because apparently, at least currently, under current conditions, the story is that he was actually responding to things and emails and stuff like that while in the ICU itself. It's plausible that that would be the case. But we really have to ask ourselves, do we really want a White House who is essentially allowing these people to just disappear for no reason whatsoever? Or, well, in Lloyd's case, there was a, perfectly good reason, but to disappear and not let anybody know as to what's going on, especially when we're dealing with all kinds of, Lloyd Austin being the Secretary of Defense, we're dealing with all kinds of worldwide challenges, military challenges that are going on. So, yeah, I don't know. This is just another indication that the White House is really in a poor state of affairs, and you have a very weak, probably very not cognizant leader at the helm. And he's, the world knows it. Let's just put it that way. Stories like this get out on the world stage, and yeah, this demonstrates clearly demonstrates that we have all kinds of problems in our government leadership. All right. Governmental leadership. So, there was a couple of congressmen who asked for him to step down as well, or were going to ask for him to step down. So, but anyway, the House has decided, it's taken them a long time, but the House has finally decided to go ahead and start impeachment proceedings on Mayorkas. They had a hearing today. Now, this article in the Epoch Times was printed before that, but they had a hearing today, and I guess they are going to move forward with impeachment proceedings against Mayorkas. Now, rumor has it, or at least there was an interview that Kat Kamek from Florida, she's a representative from Florida, she was in the proceedings where they were talking to Mayorkas or whatever, and some questions were asked, and I'm going to paraphrase this because I don't know the exact phrasing, but supposedly Mayorkas scared or concerned Ms. Kamek, very, very, made her concerned by his responses. For an example, he made the comment that if you remove me, you may not like what comes next. And so it's definitely concerning. But there's no doubt that this guy has been a problem. Now, I'm going to tell you what probably prompted this vote for him to get impeached and for the impeachment to move forward in the House was Secretary Johnson taking members of the House down to the border to show them physically what was going on down there. And so you have to ask yourself, what was it that they saw that would make them now decide to go ahead and do it rather than back just a year or two ago where Marjorie Taylor Greene brought impeachment paperwork forward, and they said, no, we're not going to impeach him now. So obviously they have now had enough of a bit of a convincing to realize that, hey, this is a bit of a problem. This is the whole thing with the border. We had the highest crossings in December of 300,000. And so, yeah, it's just, it's just amazing to me that that anybody in this freaking administration, I mean, it's just a complete train wreck. It's a crap show. I mean, it's horrible. This whole entire thing. So anyway, they're going to be listening to some people, according to this article in the Epoch Times. They're going to be listening to some people. The attorney generals of Missouri, Montana, and Oklahoma are coming in to testify and they're going to testify on how their states have been adversely affected by the secretary's failed leadership. So there we go. Anyway, we'll kind of see how that goes. But in terms of things that are occurring in Congress and everything, I'm not entirely sure that Speaker Johnson is really going to be the effective leader that everybody thought he was. I had questions when he got put in instead of McCarthy. And I'm still in the camp where I have questions. And this next thing, seriously, doesn't bode well for his next engagement as Speaker of the House. Congress leaders, this is from the Epoch Times, Congress leaders reach a $1.6 trillion deal on spending levels in a bid to avert government shutdown. Now, keep in mind, this hasn't gone through an actual vote yet. This is just a deal between Schumer and Johnson, and they're trying to avoid the government shutdown. There's going to be a vote on it fairly soon. But he apparently on January 7th announced that he had reached a deal with the Senate Democrats and the White House on top-line spending numbers, which is a key step. As you recall, before the Christmas break, the House passed a continuing resolution to allow us to go all the way to January 19th. They were funding everything to basically make it so they can kick the can down the road. He announced the development, Johnson did, in a Dear Colleague letter that was circulated to lawmakers. And he kind of talked a little bit about the proposal. Again, I don't think it's really all that great. And I haven't really looked into the immediate details on this thing, but I can tell you, based off of the reactions by the left, in particular, those people such as, let's see, who is it? Oh, yeah. By people such as Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, because they're happy about it and because the White House is happy about it, I don't think we should be. Now, it's kind of interesting because Politico actually basically said, hey, just be aware. So they're just as cautious as I am when it comes to this whole thing. They were saying that all of this negotiation doesn't necessarily mean a good thing. So that gives me a little bit of hope because, as you know, like the Politico playbook is the leftist, left-leaning propaganda, and it gives you the best idea as to what the left is thinking. But that being said, again, as Mark Kaye from the Mark Kaye Show, he's a radio broadcaster. For those of you that don't know, he's a conservative radio broadcaster out of Florida. He put out his Patriot Manifesto, and one of his rules were, if the left is happy, you shouldn't be. And this is seriously making me question what's going on, especially knowing that Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are happy about this thing. So yeah. And the fact that Joe Biden essentially approves of it. I don't know about this. I really don't. This is starting to kind of get me a little little nervous about this whole thing. I don't think Speaker Johnson is as conservative as what everybody is talking about. So, I don't know. He's just, yeah. I have to go on X all the time with Jeffries, just as a little bit of a side note. I go on Jeffries. I see Jeffries' X posts all the time, and whenever I do, he's freaking lying almost the entire time. So everything that he does and posts on X is pretty much a lie, and I have to go and refute it every single time. So there you go. All right. So let me see what's next here. Oh yeah, I told you I would get to this in my opening monologue. Here it is. Hunter Biden making the surprise appearance on Capitol Hill. This coming from the Daily Wire. And of course, I actually saw the video of this when it happened, or at least the video clip of him, sitting in there. And then, of course, stomping off when Marjorie Taylor Greene started asking questions. But apparently his lawyers were basically saying that his going to the committee hearing, he basically was saying, and again, I'm just going to point out that he thumbed his nose at the Republicans by basically saying, hey, I'm here. I can do a public testimony. Well, the thing that Hunter Biden keeps forgetting is the fact that the House Republicans are only following the process that the Democrats used on Donald Trump and the Trump impeachments and impeachment inquiries, where they would do a closed door deposition first, and then they would do the public testimony afterward. Well, Hunter Biden seems to think he can just dictate to the House Republicans as to what they were doing, in terms of this whole thing. And he was like, "Oh, I'll testify in public, but that's it." But anyway, he made the appearance. He walked in. He sat down. He sat there for probably about 30 minutes or so. And Representative Nancy Mace confronted him when he came in, calling him the epitome of white privilege. And Democrats, of course, sat there and suggested that Hunter Biden be allowed to speak, while Mace and the others called for him to be arrested. Which, again, ironically, that committee hearing that he interrupted was about him being in contempt of Congress. So they've talked about it, but they hadn't really given him that contempt of Congress yet. They hadn't done that ruling yet when he showed up. Now, there are some that are suggesting that this was a political stunt, that it was a press junket stunt, because what they did is, by him leaving, the press actually followed him out into the hallway in an attempt to try and talk to him. He did not answer any questions. His lawyer engaged with the press a little bit. But one of the press corps asked the most important question of the hour, which was essentially, and I'm paraphrasing this, was, Hunter, what's your favorite Coke to use? That press person drew some serious balls for that. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, not to be outdone, because she's just, let's just put it this way, she's got, brass ones as well. She essentially said, I think it's clear and obvious for everyone watching this hearing today that Hunter Biden is terrified of a strong conservative Republican woman because he can't even face my words as I was about to speak to him. What a coward. Well, all of this is just doing political theater. I mean, everything on this is just complete political theater. And so my understanding is, although I couldn't find an article before I came live, but my understanding is that they actually did vote for him to be considered in contempt. So now it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Now, some of the left have been saying, well, what about Jim Jordan? What about Jim Jordan? Why can he, essentially bypass a congressional subpoena, about the insurrection, quote unquote, insurrection. But here's the thing. What a lot of people don't understand is, constitutionally speaking, congressmen and women, congresspersons, have immunity from prosecution in the course of their duties, in terms of they cannot be arrested as they are in the course of their duties, which is part of the reason why when they sit down and they make their speeches on the floor and things like that, they can't be held for libel, they can't be held for slander. They have a bit of immunity when it comes to things like that, which is why the Trump immunity case is very interesting for most people, because of the fact that, and if you think about this, if Congress gets immunity, then why shouldn't the president get immunity during the course of their duties? Now, I can understand the argument, okay, in terms of the immunity piece. I can understand the argument that if he's doing something outside of his job, again, not having a clear understanding or a clear definition of what that is, I mean, you could at least make the argument that if he's not doing something that has something to do with his job, that maybe he could be, prosecuted. But again, the question is going to end up being is, how do you make, if you're going to do that, how are you going to make the determination in terms of what is his job versus what is not his job? And so I think there's a lot of nuances here, and it's been discussed throughout several years and decades prior, that presidential immunity is something that we don't really want to go into, because what you're essentially doing by allowing the president to be prosecuted for things while he is in the process of his duty, you're basically decapitating the executive. Mark Levin has talked about this. He went on about it again today, or actually last night in his broadcast. And he was talking about how the whole idea is, if you're decapitating the executive branch by going after a president and, charging him while he's in office. And one of the DC court, appeals court judges asked the most absolute ridiculous question. I can't even understand how she did not see, or he did not see, that this is like the stupidest, I don't know if it's a guy or a girl, the stupidest thing ever. But the question was basically, if the president ordered SEAL Team 6 to go and take out his political opponent, could he be charged with that? Now, I'd seen variations of that question all over social media, and I got to be honest with you, it struck me as incredibly stupid, even then. But to have an appeals court judge ask that question, again, looking back, I seem to recall Obama ordering a drone strike and killing I believe it was an Afghani civilian or a civilian that was out there, who we thought was a terrorist. And he went ahead and ordered the drone strike, and it turned out to be a family that the U.S. had worked with. So if that's the case, and presidents don't have immunity, then why can't we go back and bring Obama up on charges? Because the statute of limitations for murder is literally unlimited. So why can't we go back and prosecute Obama for that? this whole immunity thing is, I think it's opening up a Pandora's box. And some other people have pointed out, Mark Levin points it out rightly so, that he's the top law officer in the country. The president is. And the president could basically say, yeah, you're not going to prosecute me for this. He's the boss. But why? I mean, I just don't understand this entire thing, because he goes and orders, the president can go and orders. I mean, you look at like Soleimani, the killing of Soleimani. They could bring Donald Trump up on charges for that if Iran wanted to, if he didn't have immunity from, essentially killing people, because let's just say murder is illegal in the state, or in the United States. Murder is illegal. In fact, I think it's illegal in most of the world, at least in the Western cases. And I just don't get it. Why? Why would you even bother with this? And to think at any point in time that a president is going to order, I mean, outside of Biden, order the death of his own political rival. I mean, that's just getting into some really stupid and far out hypothetical bullshit. It just doesn't make any sense. All right. Well, speaking about constitutionality, why don't you get a copy of the Constitution and carry it around with you so that you can show your liberal, moronic, lunatic people at your workplace, or maybe you have some in your family or something along those lines. Go here to constitution.whiskeymusings.online and get yourself a fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution. Check this thing out. It has an 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather. The inside pages, forget the fact that the words are backwards, but the inside pages are water resistant and tear resistant. Not only the fact that, look at that stitching, look at that binding, goes all the way through the pages and the leather. They have a 100-year warranty against materials and workmanship defects. And I'm being told, Tommy's like, oh yeah, got to fix that camera. Yes, I do. I got to flip the thing back around. But anyway, they have a 100-year warranty on that against materials and workmanship, to where if it falls apart anytime in the next 100 years, you can send it back to them and they will either fix it or replace it for free. Not only that, but I'm told by all of the rumblers that it has sexy rounded corners so that it doesn't catch on your pocket when you go and stick it in your pocket. Head on over to constitution.whiskeymusings.online to go and get yours today. It is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved, and it is also approved. The contents are approved by by my youngest whiskey warrior, who passed his civics exam in Scouts by using the information contained within this document. Once again, go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online to get a copy of yours today. Hand it out to your friends, especially your liberal friends. Have fun watching them try to rip apart those tear-resistant pages. And hand it out to your non-liberal friends, your conservatives, and they'll be thanking you for having such a fantastic and stellar document to be able to stick in their pocket and carry with them all the time. Once again, go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online and order yours today. And while you're there, check out the rest of the Institute on the Constitution's books and information. And I thank them for allowing me to be an affiliate with them. All right, back to the show. So the Fannie Willis, the DA out of Georgia, one of the individuals, Michael Roman, who is one of the individuals charged in this RICO case, came up with an essential bombshell doozy this week. And, oh Coco, why'd you have to say that? Coco Dominky, elk and broccoli stir fry. It's what's for dinner. I love elk. I love elk. Elk is great. Elk and bison are like my two favorite meats. Beef is on there too, and on the top 5. But elk and bison, just love it. Anyway, sorry, I'm salivating. Let me get a drink here because this is just. Oh, just thinking about elk and elk steaks, elk burgers, elk tacos. Oh, just wonderful stuff. Anyway, okay. So Michael Roman's attorneys found out about an illicit affair between Fannie Willis and her colleague. Let's see, who is this? Nathan Wade. Now, Nathan Wade, ironically, is somebody that she contracted with to help her work on this Trump indictment. And apparently the charges, and this is one of the alleged things in the court filing that went in earlier this week, is that they had an illicit affair. And during the affair, they were using the money that Fannie Willis's office or the DA's office paid him for his services to go on lavish trips together, like cruises and to head out to some couple of places for weekends or whatever. And so, it just doesn't look good. I mean, let's just face it. It just doesn't look good. Well, this came out again right before I came on the air, and this is another one that's just the whole Georgia case I see as potentially falling apart now because of this this revelation. I think is really going to make a difference. But what's even worse is apparently now she's been subpoenaed. Good old Fannie, however you pronounce her freaking name, was subpoenaed in the divorce proceedings for Nathan Wade. And Nathan Wade was the guy that she was having this fling with, and he apparently was in the process or is in the process of divorcing his wife. His wife, Jocelyn Wade. According to the Wall Street Journal, and Hot Air was grabbed the quote, but according to the Wall Street Journal, a process server said that he left the subpoena filed by Jocelyn Wade's lawyer with Willis's executive assistant. Oh my gosh. So yeah, we also found out too, by the way, there's also information circulating that both Willis and Letitia James have been seen meeting and are on the White House logs, meeting with the Biden administration just shortly prior to the release of these Trump charges and these Trump court cases. And so if that's the case, then we could be looking at a RICO charge for these folks. Yeah, technically we could say this is a conspiracy, which falls under RICO statutes. There wasn't actually a crime committed. However, it looks like there was a conspiracy to commit this crime. And so therefore, yeah, we could go and, do this thing known as RICO. This is really, really hot. I'm telling you. Not hot as in Fannie being hot, but hot as in, oh my gosh, this looks like it's going to burn somebody. Oh my gosh. I can't. Nepotism reigns supreme within these things, within these groups, within these halls. And so, yeah, we're going to have to see kind of where that goes, but I bet that's going to throw a monkey wrench into this entire thing that's going on. And of course, just really quick in terms of the Supreme Court, I already mentioned the whole thing with the 14th Amendment as I pointed out to you before, there's already a 14th Amendment case that is on the docket to be heard, that of the New Mexico, I think he was a county executive or whatever, who basically got kicked off because of his going to January 6th. And yeah, we'll just have to see what's oh, this is going to be I mean, if you're a, court person and love watching court cases and everything else, this is definitely the year for you. You're just, let's just say that this could be on the level of like court porn for you with this year going on, because not only that, but you also have at the Supreme Court, and this is why I was going to cover all this, but you also have at the Supreme Court, 2 cases that are dealing with abortion. One of them being the misoprostol or whatever, the pill, where cases challenging the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's approval of the mifepristone abortion pill, and then and they overturned the courts overturned it. The lower courts overturned it and reversed the approval of sending the pill through the mail. And so the Supreme Court has agreed to hear that. They've already heard arguments, but they haven't judged on it. And then they also just agreed, let's see. They also agreed this past Friday. Yeah, because today's Wednesday. So this past Friday to hear a case regarding Idaho's law with regards to abortion. Idaho banned abortion, and the federal law is the federal law to require emergency rooms to give emergency room care for people to save lives. Well, Idaho passed a law that basically stated that doesn't include abortions. And so it makes it to where emergency room doctors don't have to do an abortion unless the mother's life is completely in danger, that just makes sense. So anyway, the Biden administration argued that the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, which instructs doctors not to turn away patients in need of emergency stabilizing care, preempts the Idaho ban and requires doctors to perform emergency abortions. And this past Friday, the court agreed to hear the case and then allow Idaho's ban to remain in effect until it can hear it in April. So there's that one. Then we have the censorship one, which is the Murphy versus Missouri case, and I've talked extensively on this program about that. And then you have also the Trump cases, not only the 14th Amendment cases, but also the cases that in regards to obstruction that has potentially 300 January 6th defendants, as well as Trump, on that as well. And they've agreed to essentially hear that case. And the reason why they agreed to hear that, of course, is because of the fact that the statute, just like what Jack Smith's trying to do, the statute was used in a unique and theoristic way, different than what it's initially intended. And so the Supreme Court is going to see whether or not that statute actually applies to the charges. And if they turn that over, that would get rid of that would vacate convictions on like 300 people in January 6th. And it would also take that charge off of Jack Smith's cases. And then, of course, depending upon how the case in the District Court of Appeals, the D.C. Court of Appeals, that's coming, or that's currently going on right now, I'm sure that if that goes against Trump's way, it's going to end up in front of the Supreme Court as well, which is the presidential immunity. So we got a lot of stuff going on here. I mean, January 2024 is coming in. just in all kinds of fire and brimstone. Well, this report also came out, and I think this is kind of a negative report on the economy. You know, one of the things that a lot of the left has been talking about, how, you know, Trump added so much to the debt during his period in office, and the reason why he did, most of it came from the pandemic and all of those things that the pandemic, the pandemic bills and things like that to try and help keep people afloat when they were losing their jobs and so on and so forth. Well, this came out, and this kind of shoots down a little bit of what the left keeps talking about with Trump. This in the Daily Caller, the federal debt is up $6.2 trillion under Biden, which adds $47,462 per household in America. Now, you ask all the time, and I keep getting, hit all the time, of course, with regards to the whole inflation thing. Well, inflation is literally where you have government creating more money and spending a whole crap ton of money. And this is exactly, Ronald Reagan did a fantastic 30-minute speech when he first came into the Oval Office. You got to look that up online. He did a fantastic explanation where he essentially broke down what inflation was in 30 minutes or less, I think. And, that was obviously Reagan's the great communicator, or called the great communicator for a reason. But anyway, he went ahead and discussed what inflation actually was, because, he was inheriting a huge amount of inflation coming into office in 1980. And so what we end up with here is we now have sort of the same situation, although not as extreme, but the federal debt is going up. And so a lot of people ask or make the comment about how the GDP is, GDP is at, I think, at like 4.9 or 5.2, and how that's just doing a fantastic, thing for the economy. The GDP is higher than anything else. Well, what they don't tell you, which is nothing unusual, of course, when you're trying to manipulate numbers, you don't tell the truth. But what they don't tell you is things like this: government spending drives and can drive the GDP to go up higher. It is a part of the GDP calculation, is government and private spending. That's why the GDP is not exactly the best metric to look at when it comes to trying to figure out whether or not the economy is doing well or not. And so when you have numbers like this, especially just in the last 3 years, okay, of $6.2 trillion, this is just absolutely, this is just nuts. We are so borrowing our children's and our children's children's future in order to spend today. And this is just incredibly horrible. We have got to get spending under control if we're going to do anything when it comes to the inflation rates, and especially the interest rates, to get them back to where we had them in the Trump era. We're going to have to do that again in order to get this taken care of. Now, one other thing that is really kind of scary when we're talking about scary things, and this will be the last thing that I hit that probably before I go and give you a positive message from the late, great Rush Limbaugh. But the U.S. attorney is now suggesting, through a speech that he gave, that the DOJ is now going to essentially go after, they've gone after everybody that was inside the Capitol on January 6th, but now they're going after Americans who were simply just standing outside the Capitol on January 6th. Now, let me point something out to you once again. If you are claiming to be the party fighting fascism and trying to keep Trump from getting back into office because of fascism. Doing crap like this, is not getting my vote. And you're not going to make me believe that you are not a fascist by going after people who essentially were just outside and milling around. This is ridiculous. We do not have a constitutional republic, nor do we have freedom anymore if this kind of crap occurs. So the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, his name is Matthew Graves, suggested that law enforcement will soon target those who just stood outside the Capitol on January 6th. During a press conference this week, and by the way, this comes from Townhall, hat tip to them. During a press conference this week, Graves hinted that Americans who didn't even go inside the Capitol building on January 6th could still lead to thousands of arrests. His quote, "An important note when it comes to our prosecutions about those who remained outside the building. We have used our prosecutorial discretion to primarily focus on those who entered the building and or those who engaged in violent and corrupt conduct on Capitol grounds. But if a person knowingly entered the restricted area without authorization, they had already committed a federal crime. Make no mistake, thousands of people occupied an area that they were not authorized to be present in the first place." Now, the D.C. District Attorney reportedly has already charged more than 1,400 Americans with crimes related to protests on January 6th, and he's also handed down more than 900 convictions, almost all of them having prison sentences, except for good old Ray Epps. Yes, Ray Epps was sentenced this week to community service and a fine. Now, if you sit here and look at all of the video that was out about Ray Epps, there's no way that you can sit here and say that he was not involved in some fashion. I mean, that on top of the fact that he got essentially what would have been a light slap on the wrist in his sentencing, this is just freaking ridiculous. I mean, I'm sorry. This is a complete miscarriage of justice, considering the incitement that guy was doing. Yeah, I can't even imagine. I just can't even imagine how that guy got away with not being charged with something a little bit more than what he did. All right, I got a couple more minutes left before I show you that Rush video. Couple of quick things that are happening across the globe that we need to pay attention to. The first thing, of course, is the fact that Iran, I've already kind of mentioned this, Iran sent a warship into the Red Sea after the U.S. was sinking some Houthi boats. But apparently there is also, I don't know where this is, but there is also now some suggestion that we are giving like a couple of different, we're like giving mixed messages about it. And so, yeah, it just had a bit of I mean, I don't know. This whole thing over in the Red Sea and the mixed messaging from the Biden administration because he's weak on everything. I mean, I don't know if anybody saw it, but his visit to a church was interrupted by Palestinian protesters. And I have, we've had roads shut down. There's been here in Seattle, there's been roads shut down in New York City all over this. You have the Red Sea popping off. I mean, there is a big, huge potential for a widespread hotbed over in the Middle East to break out. And then we also have just something else to keep an eye on. We also have a election coming in with Taiwan. I mentioned this last episode. That is potentially going to be a bit of a problem. And if China if the election goes the way that China does not want it to go, that's just going to start boiling the water over there. Folks, 2024, if you're not prepared right now, if you're not ready to at least take a little bit of, time away from civilization or whatever, if you're not prepared for some sort of a disaster, you better get there quick, because, right now, 2024 is probably going to be the most tumultuous year that is going to be in this region, in our history, at least in our present history. All right, but I got to leave you on a good note. And I was, occasionally I like to play these videos. And it's mainly just because, Rush was just such a fantastic voice for conservatism. I am so impressed by the guy. I wish that I could even have just a small smidgen of the man's talent that he claimed was on load from God. And so every once in a while I like to play something. And tonight, because I don't have a pet of the week, instead of pet of the week, I'm going to play this inspirational video from Rush. It's about 5 minutes long, so bear with me. But just listen to his spectacular message to all of us. Here he is, the great Rush Limbaugh.
My friends, it's very simple. And I have used this phrase consistently over the course of my 20-plus years behind the golden EIB microphone. What I believe has made the country great. And I've addressed this. When I do my rare, overwhelmingly popular public appearances, I challenge the audience to think about something. You ever wonder how it is, and why it became so, that a population at any one time of less than 300 million people created the highest standard of living, progress, economic, political, education, any standard you want to measure, the United States of America has been the greatest population of human beings in the history of the world. There have been civilizations, countries, and populations long before us that were the trademark of their day. They were standard bearers of their day. They can't compare to us. And they've been around thousands of years. Now, what was it? What is it? What is it that makes 300? Our DNA is no different than the Chi-Com DNA. Talking about in terms of humanity, our DNA is no different than any other human being anywhere on Earth or has ever been on Earth. But what is it about this 200, 300 million people that are created by far? There's no comparison. The greatest collection of human beings on the face of the earth for good. We feed the world. We relieve the world. We repair the world. We defend the world. We have liberated hundreds of millions of people who have lived in bondage and slavery. What is it about us? We're not born special in terms of our DNA. What is it? I ask people to think about this, and because I don't think this is part and parcel of what I call American exceptionalism. What is American exceptionalism? It's not that we're better people. It's not that we're smarter. It's not that we have an advantage because of our geography, because we clearly don't. But what is it that sets us apart? And there's one answer. And it's found in the Declaration of Independence. We are all endowed by our Creator. So we acknowledge God as a country. When we were founded, we acknowledge God. We were all created. We are all endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Undeniable, they're just there. And they come from the Creator. Among them, but not just, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That's pretty simple to me. Those three things, the acknowledgement of our creation by God, a loving God, that our creation, that our spirit has this natural yearning to be free and to be happy, and that there's nothing wrong with either of those. There's nothing wrong with being created, nothing wrong with being happy or trying to be, and there's certainly nothing wrong with living. It was that codification that made one crucial thing possible, and that is for ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things. Not the smartest, not the brightest, not the well-born, not the richest. Ordinary. This is a nation that became the greatest nation in human history, however many hundreds of thousands, billions, whatever years you want to say we've been plodding the earth. Ordinary people accomplishing extraordinary things made possible by the fact that our country was founded acknowledging that our freedom comes from God, not from a government, and not from some other man or some other woman. It does not come from a demagogue. It does not come from somebody promising to take care of us. It inspired people to produce, to take care of themselves and anybody else that needed it in their community via their church or whatever neighborhood organization they happen to belong to. And that's what's been lost. Too many people think that without government doing the right things, we can't succeed. And the government, when run by people like running it now, get in the way and make it impossible for ordinary people to do anything extraordinary.
And again, that message from the late, great Rush Limbaugh, and that follows, honestly, that follows the Michelle Obama interview where she basically made the comment that everything comes from government. You need to understand, folks, that America and its exceptionalism was made because of the Declaration of Independence, the thought process of our founding fathers, and as Rush so eloquently pointed out during that clip, that we are from God, that we have a creator, and that creator has endowed us with certain inalienable rights. Among these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness without government intervention. And that is my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. Do me a favor, if you enjoy the program, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button that's called a Rumble. Hit that thumbs up button, and also make sure that if you don't already have an account on Rumble, head on over to Rumble, get yourself an account. It is free. Find the Whiskey Musings Broadcast channel and hit that green follow button, because that's how this channel will grow. And my message and everybody else's message and all the conservative messages that are out there will, hopefully I can bring you great content every single Wednesday and Saturday right here on the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you Saturday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Whiskey Musings Broadcast channel. Good night, everybody.
The Whiskey Musings Broadcast is produced by Active Eye Media, LLC. All rights reserved.